Welcome to Gurl Talk with Jennie Raven. Episode 5, Emily Letts. So welcome to this podcast with me, Jennie Raven. I'm absolutely thrilled and delighted to have Emily, all the way from Boulder, Colorado, joining us to talk about therapeutic kink and what that could mean for us, what it might mean for me in this conversation, and I can't wait to dive into it. Emily, how are you doing?
I'm delightful. Just enjoying the sunshine over here.
So I usually start these podcasts off with a series of fun questions. Being a cross-dresser myself, they're usually centered around clothing. So let's just dive straight into it. So, Emily, PVC or rubber?
Oh, rubber.
Satin or lace?
Oh, satin.
Real leather or fake leather?
Real.
Red or black?
Black.
On camera or behind the camera?
On.
Giver or receiver?
Receiver.
Watch or be watched?
Be watched.
Favorite naughty word?
Oh, naughty. I'm a really big fan of cunt.
Your secret sensual weapon?
Breath.
Ooh, that's good. And finally, how would you describe yourself in a sensual and erotic space?
Slow, ancient, vampiric.
Thank you, Emily, for that. I think we've learned a huge amount about who you are. Tell me why you were drawn to this work and what is the work that you do?
So I am a therapeutic kink practitioner. I used to call myself a therapeutic dominatrix, but actually I really broadened how I interact with clients and do this work. So it can be so much more free than just me in the dom role. But I help people transform their lives by using kink and BDSM as sort of a scalpel to go into the deepest, darkest parts of them and help people liberate themselves in every single way possible. And what drew me to this work was that I was raised by a police officer who swam in the oceans of power and hierarchy in every way, shape, or form. So I was raised by a very sort of codependent, submissive mother and a father that sort of ruled the roast. And so growing up, I just was always fascinated with who has power, who doesn't have power, who is in control, who's not in control. How do you get control if you don't have control? Like, just sort of constantly studying it because I lived in a very, that feeling was always dominant of who has control, who doesn't have control. And I also was raised to believe that I'm sort of the smartest person in the room all the time because while being very like, I'm the boss here, he was also very pro female, very pro me, I would say. And sort of raised me to be almost like a politician in a way. So then, when I got older and started to really coming to my own sense of authority and power, first, my background is in social work and public health. Well, let me even back up more. My initial degree was in theater, and theater is like a microcosm of who has power and who doesn't have power, right? It's like you take archetypes and you put them in a petri dish and you say, okay, let's play here. Let's like, what if they say this? Well, if they step closer to you, all of a sudden that changes the dynamic and the breath and body and gaze and all of these tools that we use in kink. And then from there, because I got into that work, because it's like, I want to help people feel. I want to help open people's worlds up through storytelling. And then through there, I went and realized, like, if I want to help people, I should just help people directly. So I got a master's in social work and public health and spent 10 years in the reproductive justice field and anti-racism. work, talk about power systems and systems of oppression. So I got very deep into that world. And then from there, I realized that this work doesn't even actually helping anyone if it's not rooted in the soul, if it's not rooted in deep spiritual healing and my spiritual connection with self. We can't actually heal our systems. And so I left that work and started going in the personal development world. And I immediately knew that kink was the perfect like firework of how all of these chemicals came together in my life. And then from there, I just started throwing things at a wall until I built this beautiful practice that I have now. Yeah, so that's my long answer.
And how do, what is the typical journey of somebody who comes to you? Why do they come to you? How do they come to you? And what kind of experience can they expect?
Yeah, I get a lot of folks who come to me because they have gone through years of talk therapy or years of more traditional therapy, and they're still walking around with these patterns or whatever it is they're dealing with. So I get a lot of folks that are kind of like at the end of the rope, like I really need something different, which is amazing because they're like, I take people into the underworld. I walk with them hand in hand. I feel like Hermes, like, come get in my boat. Let's hang out. Like, let's go. So what is so beautiful is that people come to me and are able to share themselves with me because they feel like they're entering into an erotic space or the underworld. They share things with me that they would have never been able to share with a traditional therapist or even the sex therapist, because they see me as a dominatrix, or they see me as somebody who practices erotic taboo. So those are a lot of the folks. I mean, just people in big transitions in their life, which I love because they're so malleable, right? They're just like ready to break open. We've all experienced that. They've all experienced that, those moments in our lives where we are just porous. Yeah, so those are the kind of folks that I get.
A lot of what you've just been saying there resonated very deeply with me. Mm-hmm. When I first reached out to you, I explained that, my journey, I mean, excluding the first few decades of my sexuality, but my journey with Jennie Raven really began in the pandemic when I started writing erotic fiction, which was really just a way for me to express what was going on deep inside me. And then I accidentally, not so much accidentally, it's kind of quite logical, I discovered I had quite a big following, particularly on Instagram. I kept getting banned on Instagram.
Oh.
So I'm on my fifth Instagram account now, and every time I hit 10,000 users, I get banned. But I kept getting a lot of DMs from people who were, very confused, and it really turned me on to looking inward about why am I the way that I am. It is still one of, cross-dressing is one of those very weird kinks that is almost, is still remarkably taboo, given that it's so astonishingly harmless
and common
and playful and fun. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous how and that led to me running a number of surveys with predominantly cross-dressers. I think there's some trans people in there as well. But what really struck me was the sadness within that community as they were unable to express. And I get it totally, because it's like, as I shared with you, I've been writing a biography about my journey, and like I just write really I let her write it actually. And it's there's this kind of like raging fire inside me, and it's raging because it's never been able to be satiated. It's never really come out to play. She's had some great experiences, but it's usually a night or 2 nights, and it's never sustained. And it's always almost like a favor where, somebody's going, go on then, okay, instead of being fully embraced. And so a lot of what you're saying really does resonate. I mean, one of the words you used earlier was gaze, and that was, that's when I look at the writing that I do, it's a very big theme about being seen, being watched, being accepted, always being desired as well in that version, that erotic version of myself. Anyway, here I am interviewing you, giving a whole essay.
No, I'm ready to dive in.
Please dive in.
Okay. So right when you said sadness, I almost felt like I was going to start crying. I probably will cry on this, by the way. It's that sadness specifically. Well, let me ask, do you think the majority of your audiences are people who identify as men in their normal life and then cross-dress as women?
So, I mean, look, there's a massive spectrum of people, and I think the people who gravitate to my brand, my writing, my journey, what I express, I think tend to be older millennials, Gen Xers, and younger boomers. There are definitely some Gen Zs in there as well, but I think, there's an interesting conversation about, had I been born today, would I be trans? And I don't know the answer to that, and I think there's a strong chance I might have been trans, because that's how I felt when I was 11, 12, but that wasn't really available to me at my age. It wasn't even a conversation to even think about. So I turned it into a kink, and she lived inside me for decades. And I think a lot of people who took the survey and who are in my community, I think they fall mostly into the Gen X category, like I said, some older millennials and some boomers. So I think that they've kind of socially found themselves as cross-dressers, as men who have this kink. And to be fair, some of them have leaned into, I'm going to feminize more on a daily basis now. But I still, they're not fully trans in the way I think common parlance would accept what trans really means.
Well, so yeah, thank you for describing that. That's helpful, because that's what I see in my practice too, and the thing that I wanted to touch on is like the sadness. With sadness in that so many men who cis men carry with them. And I want to describe to you, this is the foundation, my foundational understanding for this sadness. Are you familiar with any sort of tantric principles?
Yeah.
Of divine masculine, divine feminine?
Yes.
Should I? I'll just give you...
Please do. Okay. Extrapolate, please.
Yeah. So when I learned this, it completely changed everything for me, and it became the foundation of my work, this framework. And so all beings on this earth, every human, have both divine masculine and divine feminine energies within us, okay? And do not associate these with sexuality or genitalia or gender. It's not. It's actually divine masculine is, in fact, I have some teachers who don't even use masculine and feminine because we associate it with men, women too much, but they actually use divine alpha or alpha and omega. Alpha being the masculine and omega being the feminine. This is Justin Patrick Pierce and London Angel Winters. And because the alpha is the first letter of the Greek alphabet and it penetrates, and the omega is the last letter and it receives. So let me break this down a little bit more. I'm going to use masculine and feminine just because we can associate it maybe a little bit easier. So the masculine within us is our consciousness. It is our logic. It is, master of time and space. It's how we get from point A to point B. We all need this to survive in the world, right? The feminine is our being. It is our essence. It is our feeling. It is the way we express ourselves. We have both of these energies. The masculine and the feminine need each other. Because the masculine, without the feminine, is an empty corpse. It's just a shell. It's just a structure. with nothing to fill it. And the feminine without the masculine is chaos, because there's nothing to contain it. There's nothing to keep it stabilized. And so the thing, what I see is with so many men who, again, have been socialized in the society's understanding of masculinity, and they are all structure and no being. And what that gives us are these sort of like this emptiness and this sadness of like, I know that there is magic out there. I know that there is feeling. I know that there is love out there, but there's like caged in themselves. And so they move through this world being providers, being fathers, being husbands, playing the role and masking. It's interesting that mask, it's kind of is in the word masculinity, unfortunately, and not being able to feel and not being able to have and express or dance or paint or sing or like
be on the receiving end of life,
which as humans we all need to be able to do. And so for me, when I most of my clients are men, that is what we are working on, because all of a sudden I freeform play it quite a lot. But one of the things that I provide as a practitioner, as like a therapeutic transformational practitioner coach that uses BDSM, if I provide the masculine at times, I provide the structure, I provide the, hey, you don't make decisions now, sit the fuck down. And you take me in like that experience. And that's why, and using breath to help them sink into their feminine so that they can begin to rewire their patterns to be able to receive life on a deeper spiritual level.
Again, I'm just resonating so much with everything that you're saying. In what I do for a living, I explore everything that you've just described in a completely, well, not completely, but in a very adjacent way. Certainly not in a kink scenario, but it is the foundation of what I do. One of the things that's I've come to really grapple with or try to understand, and it's really greatly used the word masking as well. Like, I can identify almost to the day I put the mask on, and it never came off. I've been really fortunate that I've got a kind of like, it's not a gaydar, and I don't know whether it's even a kinkdar or whatever it is. I've got an intuition with women that I can say, hey, by the way, there's this thing about me you should know. Do you want to, come and have a look in Pandora's box? And almost always when I've met that person, they've said, oh, okay. And it's more out of curiosity and also a kind of like compassion for me. They can see that it's important, so they go along with it. And we have a huge amount of fun. And again, it's usually playful and silly isn't the right word, but it's probably it's a good way of describing it. It's very low impact, and we all have a great time. But those experiences are very far and few between, and those are the only times in my adult life when I've been able to say, I'm taking off the mask, and Jennie Raven comes out to play. And Jennie Raven didn't have a name until like 2021. Up until that point, it was just an alternative version of me, which of course Jennie is, but she didn't have an identity or name. But the day that mask was built, there was a crossroads in my life. I want to say 11. I have some memory issues around it because I've clearly blocked it out, where I had an actual trauma to do with getting arrested by the police and my life going to hell. But it also coincided almost down to the day with my mother discovering that I'd begun exploring my sexuality by wearing clothes, and had made me ceremoniously burn it and made it clear that I was going to hell. And and a load of other, you know, dumping her stuff on me. She was a great mother, but, you know, she was passing on what her mother passed on to her. And
she was trying to protect you. That was her way of protecting you.
I don't really, you know, I don't look back and go, what a terrible mother. She was doing the best with the knowledge that she had. And taking it one step back, I'd matured into sexuality. I was almost the very first person in my peer group to become sexually mature. So I was huge, and I got horny in a way that, you know, my peers were not getting horny. And I was really attracted to girls, and I didn't know what to do with it. And I was very awkward. And then I discovered that being near the clothes was kind of like a proxy. And then, of course, when that was banned, it grew inside me until it became, you know, a kink, a fetish, or whatever, however you want to describe it. And, you know, it's remained this deep black hole in my soul that's unexplored, except for the brave souls who occasionally ventured in with me with flashlights and discovered what we've discovered in there, and those have been amazing experiences.
I have to be honest, like the moment that you say, like I remember the moment that the math went on, like as a little boy, like it brings tears to my eyes because I've seen how, like I've seen, you know, specifically with my own father, right? Like of like what it means to be how the life suffocated out of you, so that you're living in this like constant hypervigilance and fear, and like I have to perform masculinity because this feminine in me is dangerous, when that is in fact your superpower. It is your heart. It is the way that you love. It is the way that you find joy. It is the way that you receive intimacy. Again, whether you identify as a cross-dresser or trans or whatever, this is a human quality. But because you were in a male body with a penis, like that was taken away from you in a very ritualized way, in the form of your mother trying to protect you. Like that story is so common, and it breaks my heart. Like it breaks my heart. And I truly believe, so my background is in reproductive justice, right? Of like supporting women or people, birthing people, being able to have a baby if they want to have a baby, not have a baby if they don't want to have a baby, and raise their babies with dignity. Well, if they want to raise their babies with dignity, that means you need access to clean water. You need access to parks that are safe. You need access to good education. You need access, right? Like imagine if this world and all of our systems were oriented around how do we create the most healthy families possible instead of money, right? Or instead of all of these other constructs, but the actual family. Well, the thing that I realized, and I used to work in crisis counseling centers, I've worked in abortion clinics, I've worked as a birth doula, like all of these different ways. And the things that I realized is, you know, if we are just focusing on the women, which is so important, the hurt is coming from men. Men are the ones in power. Men are the one, you know what I mean? And so when you start digging in, okay, well, if I want to go towards the root of the issue here, I actually need to be working with men. And if I want to go to the root of the root of the root issue, I actually need to be working with supporting men in feeling their feminine. And for me, the most beautiful exploration of that, of the one who, it's like the feminine is like leaking out of them and they're just trying to shove it back in and like can be confusing, are cross-dressers. And that's why I think cross-dressers are, and people who are doing this exploration, and anyone who's exploring their gender, like anyone who's exploring this in a conscious way and doing what you're doing, which is like bringing it out into the world, which takes so much bravery, is like, I personally believe, the heroes of our society, because like the more that we can do this, the more we can normalize these parts of ourselves, and that is how we heal.
Again, coming back to one of the things that I noticed, with my gaydar, kinkdar, whatever you want to call it, but I also can sense the men that I can talk to, and it's always way more than you think. Like, you just have to drop a phrase and you can see a look, an eyebrow, and you go, yeah, I can talk to them about this. And it turns out that, yes, I don't know what the percentage is, but I would not be surprised if it's 20% of men are regularly thinking about it or exploring it. And it may well be way more than that. It would not surprise me.
And the difference is, and let me tell you, the difference is not like the secret is there is no difference between the men, the 80% and the 20%. It's just the 80% are still terrified of that portion in themselves. And the 20% have done a little digging.
Yeah.
That's the only difference, because it's universal across the board.
Yeah, yeah. And that 20% in my experience tends to be more playful, creative.
Yeah.
They're on that kind of, less corporate, less, driven by making money.
Success.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
However you define it. Yeah.
And those are all tools of oppression of men. That is the thing that I have done, like, I feel so strongly about, is like success is the tool, the success, quote unquote, and whatever can I swear on this?
You could absolutely fucking yes.
Okay. Whatever the fuck success means, which literally means nothing in Western culture anymore. That is an oppressive tool for men. And I come from a very feminist background, and we talk about the systems that oppress women. We don't talk about the systems that oppress men, which are all oppressing all of us. But like, again, working with some men is for me is the root. And like, and that's the thing, is when you say these men that you can see more playful, more less success driven, more creative, this is again because they have a more integrated sense of their feminine.
In some ways, this is a challenge I face myself currently. But one of the things that came out of the survey was the huge number of men that found themselves in relationships where they're unable to express themselves. And when they have brought it up, or they have tried to integrate it in some ways, it's a hard no, or a let's try it, dear God, no, never again.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that. That is because they have so successfully marketed, branded, and sold their mask that, like, they've attracted a mate based on their mask. Like, I have so many clients, so many. Maybe all, that's not true. I would say a good number of my clients experience this. And then it's like they start doing this work for themselves and start coming out, and they're like, it's a hard no for my partner. I was like, well, what did you have spent your whole life perfecting this coping mechanism of, and like, you created a package that you were told was successful and attractive. So why would you think this is not going to be hard for your partner when you spent your whole life being like, I'm the provider, I'm the man, I'm the, like, you get to be woman, I have man now. Now all of a sudden you want to be like, wait, can I play in the woman space? They're like, and the thing is, they've also attracted women who've never explored consciously their own masculine, right? They'll do it in an unconscious way, right? Which is like, oh God, I have to be a parent. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to do this. but those women don't know how to express their desires. They don't know how to take like the true joy of being in a dominant position where you say, I want you, like the sexuality and the eroticism and the embodiment of being the feminine aspect, a feminine being taking on the role of the masculine, because that's going to look different than a masculine, like a male body taking on the role of the masculine. Like these two things are these two archetypes, right? Because they're just archetypes. And for those who don't know, because people ask me all the time, what is an archetype? An archetype is like the roles we play. So, for example, a king is an archetype. A slave is an archetype. A submissive, a maiden. These are just archetypes. But there's not, like, we are so terrified of moving out of the archetype we were sold as what our personality should sit in to be safe and certain and provide, that there's very little exploration of anything else. And so when somebody does have the bravery to invite their partner into a different archetype play, it can be deeply threatening for the entire structure of their universe. It makes sense.
I mean, I guess if it gets to that point of, like, what do I do? Do I say goodbye to the she in me, if that's a silly way of saying it, in order to keep the kingdom from collapsing? Or do I collapse the kingdom and live my life? Or is there a way that you've experienced where partners can be, I suppose, at least brought round to accommodating the concepts, even if it's not done with their consent, or not consent, their participation?
Well, first and foremost, it's important to understand that saying goodbye to the she in me is never going to work.
Exactly. Exactly.
You can try all you want, but it's just not going to play, friend. It's just not going to play. It's going to, it's going to leak out of you in all of these terrible, shitty ways. You're going to cheat on your partner. You're going to be unfaithful, or you're just going to be dead inside. And then if you have children, you're going to raise children with a dead father. It's like, no, negative. Reject all of these stupid ideas. They're not going to work. Everyone who's listening to this, stop pretending that this is the solution, because it's not. And then eventually you're going to come knocking on my door and pay me lots of money, and we're going to have to go through a long process, but it's going to be amazing and playful and erotic and great. But I'm going to say, you could also just stop now. So the first thing is that you have to make a commitment to yourself. This is the first, I'm going to journey through what this could look like for folks. Say you're at the beginning of this journey and you're like, wow, and a lot of times people they sneak their way onto this pathway, right? Because they try to do it unconsciously because they don't want to confront themselves. So, they might look at porn that's of the kink, or, it's like little back alley ways, or maybe they've even seen a dom behind a partner's back, or, something that is like, no, they can deny it. They can be in their archetype that's a lying hider, which is just like fully in denial. And eventually, there is a space where it's like, eventually something catches up to them. Where it's like, I'm tired of being get inside, or I got caught, or I can't lie to my partner anymore. So the first thing is making a commitment to themselves. And the commitment to themselves, and it also, I would say, do you have children, Jennie?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So having children, as you know, complicates things. Like rain complication down on the faces of all of this, because it's very your responsibility. But still, regardless of if you have children or not, the first thing is you have to stop, breathe, and turn inwards. And so, first of all, the first thing is a commitment to being curious with yourself. I'm committed to taking a look at what's inside here. And that can be through journaling, and that can be through praying, and that can be through meditating, and that can be through dance, like shutting the door and putting on dance music. But just like, what is actually going on? Stalk the creatures that are inside. Stalk. When you first met Jennie Raven, I'm sure there was like, who is this person? What do they like? What does she want to wear? How does she move? What are her triggers? What is the trigger that makes her want to come out and play? Who does she feel safe with? So just curiosity. And then and make a commitment, like, what do you need to be able to feel safe for you to have this personal inquiry? And that might mean, safety might mean being honest with your partner. If you have a sense of safety already, be like, hey, I'm doing this inquiry for myself. Before, and that's much easier before you've already been unfaithful or somehow broken agreements. Let me tell you, it's harder once you've broken agreements. Because then all of a sudden there's distrust and dishonesty and all these things, which you're going to have to confront sooner or later if you want the life you deserve. So what do you need to be able to feel safe? Okay, do you need to create structures around you, which is like, okay, at work, when I'm, on my lunch, when I'm hidden from all sight, that is when I do this inquiry. Because it's much easier, and I would say if you have a lot of things stacked against you, like if you think your partner is not going to be supportive, or you're scared about, the consequences of being more honest and transparent, it's much easier when you know what you're dealing with. Oh, actually, I've written this out and I see there's a tiny line since I was 11 years old. Well, Jesus Christ, I have been thinking about this for 20 years. That's a pretty good argument. That's a pretty good, and not that you have to argue with anyone. That's the point. You're valid. You are normal. You're valid. You have all the reason in the world for this journey. You do not have to defend it against anyone. So that's my point, is first you have to solidify for yourself the reasons why you need to go on this journey. That is so important, because you deserve that. You deserve a commitment to yourself. And then once you have that strong spine, this is who I am. And again, not defensive, but just this is what I mean. Then that's when you can start moving in for your partner. And now you have to understand, I think I have a few videos on my social media about this. You have to understand that when you approach your partner about any kink that you are scared or feels vulnerable, or any sexuality or any experience that feels taboo, you have to understand and be prepared. Your partner might not have the reaction that you want them to have. And the number one reason that is because it is threatening to their sense of how your relationship and how their family system works. That is valid. That is so valid. So part of it is yes, there's a request. So the first thing is you have to first ask, make sure you talk to them when they are resourced, right? Hey, do you have capacity for hey, I want to have a real conversation with you later tonight, but I want to cook you dinner. I want to twig you. I want to make sure that let's get all the kids to bed. Let's get some time. So creating capacity, because you don't want to do this when they're frazzled or in between things. The second thing is recognizing that why do you want to go on this journey in order to help your relationship? That's the thing. Hey, I'm recognizing that I want to be a better partner for you. I'm recognizing that I recognize that I'm not present. I recognize that our sexual life is is feeling flat. And I know this because you have told me this. So take your partner's own words and absorb them. I want to show up for you. I love you. I'm committed to you. I want to bring my full self to you. And in order to do that, I have to go on a journey. Now, and then share what you want to share. And again, but put it in the context of, and always, I need to go on this journey for myself. What do you need to ensure that you feel connected to and a sense of safety as I go on this journey? Because one of their biggest fears is that you're going to turn into a person that can no longer be their partner. So I'm curious, Jennie, like when you came out, did you have a partner at the time? Like, I'm curious, like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's happened is that I've been able to explore my sexuality mostly with people who I classify as friends.
A quick question though, when you started exploring Jennie, were you partnered at the time?
The complexity of the situation for me is that crossroads that I alluded to or spoke about at the beginning. At that crossroads, there was also an enormous insecurity about having relationships with women and being attracted to women, and it all kind of got jumbled up, and I developed a system whereby I could have closeness without being in a relationship, and that became part of how I lived my life for a very, very long time. And I needed to do some work to unpack that, which I figured out late in my 30s, early 40s. Then I got into a relationship. It was suddenly like a playground I'd never been into. And because I was very high on my own, I suppose, personal development journey, and I'd suddenly had the thing that I'd wanted for 25 years. And I did let Jennie out at that point, and there was really no problem letting Jennie out until it became, there's a little bit too much Jennie at the moment. Could we dial that back? And then I found myself...
That your partner said that to you?
Yeah, not in a particularly, like, it wasn't like a deal breaker or anything. It was just, you know, it was just a little bit too much. And then...
for them.
And then we just started coasting. And we've been coasting ever since. And...
what's that mean?
There's no... You know, we don't dislike each other. It's just gone flat. And that's part of my journey right now, is figuring out how to navigate this, because I have a son that I have to be, you know, responsible for.
From this relationship?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And, but I'm also looking at the end of the tunnel going, Jennie's basically saying, come on, get on with it. Like, time is running out. And I have almost like a giant checklist of things I want to do and experience, and those things are incompatible inside of a traditional relationship. There is a universe where I speak to my partner and say, I need to go and explore all this, and I understand you will have a very profound opinion about what that might mean, but I need to do this, and so. How do we feel about that? And I don't quite know what would happen.
Well, what would you want?
I don't know is the answer, and that's an even more complicated answer, because, you know, I've been researching about attachment styles and again systems of oppression. I'm like, well, you know, I'll be a bad father, and, you know, I'll be letting people down and all of that stuff. And so Jennie smashed through the gates and said, start writing stuff, start creating a website, have an Instagram, do a podcast, which is mad when I say it out loud, that I've managed to, you know, put this thing together quietly over there without being noticed, and have a following, and so, but Jennie's getting to that point where she really wants to really take over.
Oh, yeah, I see it. But here's my question. You said without being noticed. So does your partner not know about any of this?
No. Yeah. It just would...
So literal double life.
Yeah, it is. It's a can of worms. And I've squared it with myself because, you know, while I may be doing a double life, I'm not out having a kind of literal affair. Maybe I'm being disingenuous to myself. Probably am. Yeah, I saw that look there.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me just acknowledge and celebrate the ingenuity. Seriously, the ingenuity of what you and so many men have to do in order to survive. And you know, it's really interesting, like, to be a human. Yes, you are in a male body. You are human. Like, you masculine, divine masculine, divine feminine. You probably lived so much of your life in the divine and the masculine. And like these things, and yet, okay, let me, like, so I understand your coping mechanisms are, you're a genius. You are a genius at surviving the life that you have led. You are a genius at trying to, like, squeeze things together and Tetris yourself into this and that position so that you can continue on with the roles that you were assigned. And I will also say, well, my real question, what are you afraid of if you came out?
So I think it really comes down to being alone. And I think there's an attachment wound, a very deep I think the moment that I put the mask on was the day I was very close to my mother. I trusted her. I loved her deeply. And the day that she shamed me to that degree and I knew even at 11, 12, this is who I am, and there's nothing really wrong with who I am. But that trust was broken.
Yeah.
And I've forever been attempting to rebuild that relationship with women in my life, which is why I've become a master of having loads of really close female friends and not many lovers.
Yeah.
And it's that core wound that goes back to when I was 11, that moment she sat me on the sofa and told me I was going to hell and go and burn everything.
I'm truly feeling that time in your life and how you have had to carry that memory with you every single moment of every single day.
Yeah.
Jennie, I see that, and how hard it's been. And how old are you now?
56.
56. So that's 4 decades.
Yeah.
4 decades of that moment over and over and over again. Do you believe that there exists a future or a life where that memory was a source of power, a source of deep healing and deep self-recognition?
Yeah, I mean, even just having this conversation semi-publicly, it is part of that journey. And, you know, there's what I do from, like, there's another crossroads which Jennie Raven is really kind of switches me on, which is, I suppose, entrepreneurship. And there's a very large part of me that it will just take one gentle nudge and I will start a very, very public, large-scale movement. Movement's not the right word. Event, brand that would be very, very visible in the UK. You know, I already operate in that industry, but not that sector. So it would be a very simple pivot. And there's a big part of me that just wants to go on stage and say, here's Jennie Raven, and, you know, just unleash her. And I'm sure it'd be huge fun.
I think so. Here's my question, though. When you shared that story with me and I sat with it and I was like, I really see this. Was there emotion coming up for you?
Yeah, there is. I mean, just to give you some perspective, I began writing a biography maybe 18 months, 2 years ago, where I was deep diving and investigating my life, my journey, my experiences, and this duality within me, the masculine, the feminine, with some of the chapters written by the masculine, and some of the more entertaining chapters written by Jennie. And that coincided with myself putting myself into therapy and counselling, and all of my sessions were delving into it. So I've done a lot of the emotional soul searching and then written chapters on it, then deleted them and rewritten them and deleted them and rewritten them. So for me now, I've looked at the prism from every different direction 100,000 times, and it does still hit hard when I'm like, I think even now, if I'm just observing myself, I'm still being quite, scientific isn't the right word, but I'm observing.
I can pull it on me just about to say that.
I'm observing myself, and I'm not going into the squishy part, because I've got to make sure the levels on the recording here, and I've got to press start and stop, and so there's a part of me that's just got to continue operating in that way. So I've not gone to the squishy place.
And sorry, go ahead. I hear you. You're in. Also, this podcast is a pretty new role for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some of that, and I will tell you this with a lot of certainty. I love having certainty about things that I don't know anything about. Like, I don't know you really, but I'm gonna tell you what you should do. This is my dom coming out. Is that if you really want to change the world as Jennie Raven, with Jennie Raven, it's not you're going to push start and stop that's going to change people's hearts and minds. It's you bringing an integrated feminine to the masses.
Yeah.
Which means being able to fall in love with the squish.
Yeah.
Fall in love with the pain. And that's everything what I believe kink is for me and my clients. It's the moment where pain and presence meet. Being able to be present with the pain. That is when the fun, the magic, the soul, everything ignites. When you can be in the depth of this pain and be and surrender to it and let it, and the same way that you surrender in a kink scene and you say, take me, like I'm yours, and knowing that it's not going to kill you. Right? Just like in a kink scene, because human emotions the human emotion lasts for seconds. And then literally a human emotion doesn't last for forever. And then it will change and it will transmute the exact way that when you're in an impact scene and somebody's beating the shit out of you with a paddle or something, the first hit you might brace. Because you're like, oh God, you're not, but then all of a sudden, the fifth and the sixth, all of a sudden there's a melting. And you allow it to ripple through your body. And that is why I say my number one tool in kink is the breath. Because it's how we cope, how we can sit with what we might think is unbearable. The breath is how it transmutes in our body into pleasure. Anything that causes you pain in your life, anything, you bring breath to it, and new realms will open up to you.
Well, look, I think we're coming towards the end of our conversation, and I'm already going to be sending you an email for part 2 at some point. Thank you so much for an amazing conversation. I just want to ask one final question. What advice would you offer somebody who's perhaps a bit older in life and coming to the realization that they've locked something away, they want to explore something, they want to discover it, they want to get squishy, what advice would you give that person about how to proceed?
Well, it's pretty similar to what I said before, which is like, first and foremost, like recognize what you're bracing against. Recognize that this is something that you need to be committed to. And how you do that is so first of all, it's just like turning towards it and then bring breath to it. Be in the thing and like breathe into it. I can't imagine the first time that you put on Jennie's outfits or something and like literally was just like stood in the mirror and breathed, right? And you just look and you're breathing and you're human and you're letting it like penetrate you, her wisdom, her magic. And you brought breath to it. It's no longer just a pile of clothes when you bring breath to it. It's a part of your soul that is expressing itself. So that is the first step. Is you got to breathe into it and cure it, and then you follow curiosity. The other thing the last thing that I'll say, and again, like all of this is the work that I do. This is what I'm so passionate about. This is why I love working with men, and most of the men I work with are literally in your exact position. Like I even have I started doing group work with men, bringing men who cross-dress and submissive men, and they're generally all in their 50s, and they're generally either have just or about to leave or thinking about leaving their long-term partners in order to come out as kinky. Because that is how prevalent this is. And also, men in these positions often don't know how to have brotherhood with other men. Because they're terrified of the masculine, and they're terrified of their own masculine because it's been a suffocating force within themselves. So this is what my work is about. So the last thing that I'll say, what is so important, is you cannot force pleasure. If you are in a mask, you're not going to be able to find pleasure. Pleasure is something you have to follow. So it's like, I always say this, it's like smelling barbecue down the street. You step outside, you take a whiff. What is that smell? What is that smell? Is it the neighbor? Is it this way? And then you follow this smell, right? Until you get to like that fizzling, delicious flesh. That is how pleasure works. You cannot prescribe pleasure. And so if you are not feeling pleasure in your role in the masculine, as your role in a father, as your role in your relationship, as a provider, maybe it's because you are not listening to your own body.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And it's all born out of fear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. So, Emily, how can people find you on the interwebs?
Well, thank you so much for asking, Jennie Raven. So my website is soulkink.com. Soul is in your soul, and kink as the thing we all know and love. .com. And then if you go, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, and it's all some variations of Soul Kink. So YouTube is at Soul Kink, and TikTok is at Soul Kink 00, and Instagram is at Soul Kink.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, and I can't wait to listen to this back.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for your bravery and your heart, Jennie.
Thank you. Thank you, girls, for listening to my podcast. I really appreciate you listening all the way through to the end. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, then please consider going over to my website at jennieraven.com and join my mailing list. Then you'll get information about all of my very, very naughty things that I send out on a regular basis. You'll also get access to a couple of my free stories. You can either read them, or better still, you can experience them as an audio journey where I will directly encourage you to dress up for me in your favorite costume and do very, very, very unspeakably naughty things. I can't wait for you to send me photos of that experience with me, so please do join up at JennieRaven.com.